My name is Elena Ruiz. I'm 33 years old, and just a few weeks ago, I received the same message I get every single year. Sorry, sweetie. Not enough space for you at the Sedona Lodge this summer. It came through as a text from my mother at 6:42 a.m., like it always does. Short, cold, and rehearsed. No apology, no emotion. Just a pre-written dismissal sent with the efficiency of a dental appointment reminder. For a while, I used to stare at that message and wonder if it was true. If maybe, just maybe, there really wasn't enough space for me. But last month, 3 hours after receiving that text, I came across something that shattered every excuse they had ever used. A photo. Just one photo. My brother Isaac had posted it on his Instagram story. A picture of a printed itinerary for the upcoming family retreat. At the top, in bold capital letters, it read, Sedona Summer Gathering, 122 confirmed guests. 122 people. And somehow, still, not enough space for one more. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't poor planning. It was deliberate. It had always been deliberate. For as long as I can remember, I've been the forgotten daughter. The one who didn't follow the blueprint. The one who turned left when the whole family turned right. While my siblings became lawyers, financial consultants, and surgeons, I became an interior architect, a designer, a creator of space. And apparently, according to my parents, someone who didn't belong in theirs. I run my own boutique firm now. I've designed restaurants, eco-hotels, and meditation spaces in 5 different states. My work has been featured in national publications. I've had my designs reviewed by celebrities and collaborated with wellness leaders on projects that span continents. But at home, at the one place that should have recognized me, I am invisible. The Sedona Lodge is not just a vacation spot. It's a legacy. My grandparents, Alma and Julian Ruiz, bought that land when I was only 7 years old. Nestled against the red rock cliffs and scattered with pinyon trees, it was their dream. A place where the family could gather every summer, laugh, eat, and connect. And in the early years, that's exactly what it was. I remember making sun tea with Grandma on the back deck, helping Grandpa stack firewood for the outdoor pit, and racing my cousins through the dusty trails that looped behind the lodge. There was a freedom in those days, a sense of belonging that didn't need to be earned. But all of that changed when my grandparents passed. Suddenly, my parents were in charge. Suddenly, the lodge became a showcase. A place to impress rather than embrace. Guest lists expanded to include business associates, clients, donors, even golf buddies. The atmosphere shifted from soul to strategy, and somewhere in that transition, I disappeared. The first year I was excluded, I believed the excuse. I told myself it was just bad timing, that maybe I hadn't confirmed early enough, that maybe, just maybe, they really did run out of rooms. But now, after seeing the itinerary with 122 confirmed guests and a note about overflow accommodations at Canyon Creek Villas, the truth hit me harder than ever. It was never about space. It was about control. It was about narrative. It was about the fact that I didn't fit into the curated image my parents wanted to present. And this year, I wasn't going to accept it silently. Before I continue my story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like the family outcast, trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Because this time, I didn't try to fit into their space. I created my own. The Sedona family retreat had once been sacred ground. My grandfather used to say, "The canyon remembers love." Every summer, he and Grandma Alma would make a big show of pulling out the same worn guest book they'd kept since 1987. Inside were scribbled notes, jokes, and little drawings from every family member who'd ever stayed there. I remember writing, at age 10, in green crayon, "Elena's gonna build houses in the sky someday." I wonder now if that guest book still exists, or if it was quietly tossed when my parents took over. Back then, before the politics, before the exclusion, the lodge was where I first felt seen. Grandpa Julian would walk with me at dusk, pointing out the lines of the horizon and how the cliffs shifted color with the sun. "You've got an eye, mi niña," he'd whisper. "You don't just look. You see?" He's the one who gave me my first drafting kit. When I told my family I wanted to study design at the Rhode Island School of Design instead of applying to Stanford like the rest of my siblings, he said only this: "Make your world bigger, even if they try to shrink it." But Grandpa didn't live to see me graduate. Neither did Grandma. And when they were gone, everything changed. My parents, Teresa and Daniel Ruiz, are not bad people in the traditional sense, but they are rigid, controlled. They value metrics, degrees, linear paths. To them, my siblings represent success they can measure. Isaac, the venture capitalist. Sophia, the surgeon. Mateo, the lawyer. Camilla, the hedge fund advisor. Daniel Jr., the orthopedic specialist. And then there's me, Elena, the one who designs lighting concepts and floating staircases, the one who shows up to holiday dinners alone, the one who, in their eyes, has a career that sounds more like a hobby. 3 years ago was the first time I didn't get an invitation to Sedona. The excuse was vague. "We're keeping it small this year, sweetheart. Just core family." And I believed it. Until I saw the photos. Rows of banquet tables, a mariachi band, a fire dancer, easily 50 people in a single group shot. I didn't say anything. Not that year. Not the next. But this year, I couldn't swallow it anymore. Not when I saw they had rented overflow villas for the guests they did want to make space for. I remember staring out the window of my Portland apartment the night I saw Isaac's post. The rain tapping against the glass. My body frozen in that kind of grief you can't put into words. Not the loud, violent kind. The quiet kind. The kind that hollows you out. I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed 1,000 tiny humiliations. When Mom skipped my first solo gallery show to attend Sophia's hospital fundraiser. When Dad introduced me at a wedding as the creative one, still doing interiors or something. When, 2 Christmases ago, I got a set of measuring spoons while my siblings received luxury watches and designer bags. It was always subtle, always deniable. That's what made it so hard to name. And maybe that's why I finally called Priya. She picked up on the second ring. They did it again, didn't they? I didn't have to say anything. "How many people this time?" she asked gently. 122. I whispered. "They rented another property, Priya. They had space for 122 people. Just not me." A long pause. Then, "Elena, this isn't about space. This is about the fact that they don't know what to do with someone they can't control." Her words sat with me, heavy and hot. "Maybe I should just show up," I said, half joking, half serious. "Walk in with a bottle of mezcal and see who pretends to be surprised." "No," Priya said. "You don't crash someone else's party. You build your own." I didn't say anything, but in that moment, through tears, through the ache, something inside me clicked. She was right, and I was done asking for permission to be seen. The next morning, I woke with the kind of clarity that only comes after a night of unraveling. It wasn't just about this year. It never was. It was about every version of me that had been told I wasn't enough. Not successful enough, not traditional enough, not worth the effort. I had bent myself into silence year after year, shrinking just to keep the peace. And I realized in that stillness, I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. I sat on my couch with a cup of black coffee, staring at a framed photo of my grandparents. Grandma Alma had her hair in a loose braid, laughing in mid-motion as Grandpa held her hand under a burst of desert wind. It was taken at the Sedona Lodge, the real version of it, before it became a stage. "They would have made room for me," I whispered. My phone buzzed beside me. It was a notification from Isaac again. Another post from the upcoming retreat. "Caterers locked in. This is gonna be next level." I didn't open it. Instead, I opened my browser and typed 5 words: luxury retreat properties near Sedona. At first, it felt impulsive, ridiculous even. But the more I scrolled, the more the idea took shape. I wasn't trying to compete with my family's event. I didn't need to prove anything to them anymore. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclamation. That's when I saw it. A place called Cielo Ridge, a modern glass-wrapped sanctuary nestled on the edge of the canyon, just 15 minutes from the family lodge. 6 private suites, an outdoor fire circle, a meditation platform overlooking the valley. It was breathtaking. And it was available the exact same week as the family retreat. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The price tag made my throat tighten. I had been saving for a down payment on a future project, a community studio space I dreamed of opening in Portland. But this was a different kind of investment. Not in property, in power. Within 2 hours, I had filled out the inquiry form. By noon, I had spoken to the property manager, and by dinner, I'd wired the deposit. The second the confirmation email hit my inbox, I closed my laptop and exhaled. It was real. I was hosting my own retreat. I called Priya immediately. "You were right," I said. "I'm doing it. I booked a property." She gasped so loudly I had to pull the phone away. "Tell me everything." I explained the idea as it was forming in my head. A gathering for creatives, for thinkers, for anyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. A space of elevation, of joy, of real connection. "Call it the Elevation Retreat," Priya said, voice giddy with excitement. "Because that's what you're doing, Elena. You're rising above all of it." The name stuck instantly, and just like that, my pain became a blueprint. Over the next several days, I slipped into full design mode. I drew branding mock-ups, sketched room layouts, and outlined a week-long experience that would rival even the most polished resort. I envisioned sunrise yoga on the sandstone ledge, nightly fireside stories under the stars, workshops that reawaken people's creative instincts. It would be everything the Sedona retreat used to be before it was weaponized into a family performance. This time, the gathering would be intimate, soulful, real. By the end of the week, I had an invite list. 20 people, each hand-selected not for optics, but for heart. Priya was the first, of course. Then I invited Juniper, my college professor turned poet who had mentored me when no one else understood my work. My friend Devin, a nature photographer whose images had once saved me from a panic attack. A few clients turned confidants. And, after a long pause, my sister Carmen. Carmen was the only one who ever called me after the retreats ended. She didn't challenge our parents, she wasn't rebellious, but she had seen me. "And once years ago, so," she whispered during a family dinner, "I wish I had your courage." As I hit send on each invitation, a quiet hope bloomed in me, not just for a successful event, but for a space where I finally didn't have to defend my existence. A space where I could simply be. And for the first time in years, I started to feel something I thought I had lost: belonging. The week that followed was a whirlwind of planning, of pacing, of pouring myself into something I hoped would heal more than just me. I cleared 2 weeks from my work schedule. I delayed 2 client deadlines and pulled some long nights to wrap up deliverables before disappearing into the desert. By day, I finalized logistics: room assignments, dietary needs, activity schedules. By night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by sketches, color palettes, and vision boards. It didn't feel like work. It felt like coming home to myself. Priya was my sounding board for everything. "Do we go with reclaimed wood for the welcome signs or hand-painted canvas?" I asked one evening while stirring lentils. She didn't hesitate. "Canvas, raw, honest, like the whole thing." I smiled, warmed by the certainty in her voice. It was the kind of support I'd spent years craving from my family and learning to live without. I wanted every detail of the Elevation Retreat to feel intentional, because I had spent my entire life being treated as an afterthought. I hired Sophia, a local chef who focused on plant-forward cuisine and had once catered a wedding I designed. I emailed Devin to lead a nature photography hike at dawn. I convinced Juniper to run a late-night journaling circle on the second night. And I hired a massage therapist to offer bodywork in the afternoons for anyone who needed grounding. When I built the website, clean, elegant, with photos of canyon sunsets and smooth sandstone lines, I cried a little. Not because of the beauty, but because I was finally creating a space I had always hoped someone would make for me. A space that didn't demand I shrink or perform. A space where I could belong, without condition. I posted the first teaser image on Instagram, a glimpse of a hand-lettered sign reading, "Find the space that sees you." The caption was simple, "Coming soon. Elevation." Within hours, people messaged asking what it was. One of those messages came from Carmen. "Is this what I think it is?" she wrote. I waited a full hour before replying. "Yes," I said, "and there's a spot with your name on it." The typing bubble appeared and disappeared 3 times before she finally sent, "I want to come. I really do. But if Mom and Dad find out..." "They will," I replied, "and they'll be uncomfortable. That's not a reason to say no. It's a reason to say yes." There was no reply that night. The next morning, a single word arrived. Yes. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall silently. Not for approval, not for vindication. For hope. 10 days before the retreat, I drove down to Sedona to meet with the property manager of Cielo Ridge. The air was dry and electric, the kind of stillness that carries promise. When I pulled into the gravel drive, the sun was slicing across the canyon in bands of gold. The house was everything I'd dreamed. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft desert tones, wide-open decks, and an energy that whispered, "You are welcome here." I walked through each room slowly, imagining the people who would soon inhabit the space. In the master suite, I placed a woven throw over the bed and set out a journal with a handwritten note. This space was created with you in mind. In the kitchen, I sketched ideas for a communal grazing table for the first evening, a welcome meal with wine, laughter, and nothing performative. The most sacred space was the overlook, a narrow deck that extended into the canyon air. I stood at the edge, arms outstretched, and for the first time in years, I felt tall in my own story. Not fighting for space, not apologizing for taking up too much, just enough. As I turned back toward the house, my phone buzzed. It was my father. A single-line text. "Heard from Isaac that you're not coming to the lodge again this year. Hope everything's okay." I stared at it, pulse steady. Then I did something I'd never done before. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I didn't chase their understanding. Because I had finally learned, some silences speak louder than any explanation. The elevation retreat began quietly, without fanfare or spectacle. On a warm Sunday afternoon, the first car pulled into the gravel drive. It was Juniper, wearing her signature linen shawl and carrying a worn leather notebook. She stepped out, took one long look at the house silhouetted against the canyon, and said, "This place feels like breath." The others trickled in slowly after that. Devin and his partner Lila, Priya with her sun hat and boundless energy, Marcus from my first boutique project in Santa Barbara, and 3 fellow designers I'd worked with during a retreat in Iceland. One by one, they crossed the threshold not just into the house, but into intention. Everyone who arrived carried something. An idea, a wound, a hunger to be somewhere they didn't have to prove their worth. We spent the first evening outside. I had arranged low seating on the overlook deck with layered rugs, cushions, and amber lanterns that flickered against the dusk. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, Sophia served roasted vegetables and handmade flatbread with honeyed goat cheese. Wine flowed. Laughter came gently, like water returning to a dry stream. I didn't give a speech. I just stood up and said, "Welcome. This is a space for those who've ever been told they're too much or not enough. May this week remind you of your wholeness." The clink of glasses in response was quiet, but powerful. Later that night, I posted a single photo to my personal Instagram. It was the table under the stars, still glowing with candlelight. The caption read, Not every table deserves your presence. So I built one that did. I knew they'd see it, and I didn't care. The next morning, as the desert light poured into the glass rooms, we began our first full day. Devin led a sunrise photography walk along the ridge. Participants returned with dust on their boots and wonder in their eyes. Juniper hosted a guided journaling session under the juniper trees. I watched people I respected put down their armor, revealing the kind of rawness that never surfaces at conference panels or curated social events. Around noon, I received a message from Carmen. Heading your way now. Had to make up some excuse about a friend's bachelorette weekend. Hope that's okay. I replied, you never need an excuse to choose yourself. When she arrived, her eyes brimmed with something I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. Recognition. She hugged me tightly, burying her face into my shoulder. You really did it, she whispered. You made the space. That night, as we sat in a circle around the fire, Carmen shared, not just about the retreat, but about the pressure, the exhaustion, the quiet ache of being the good daughter who never got to ask what she actually wanted. I didn't know how much I needed this until I was sitting in it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Around us, no one judged. No one interrupted. They simply listened. In that stillness, I felt the canyon hold us, like the walls of the red rock were finally echoing back the sound of inclusion. The next morning, I awoke to 27 notifications. Photos from last night had been shared, comments had started rolling in, and one message stood out. It was from my brother Isaac. What is this? Just 3 words, no punctuation, no context. I didn't answer, because if he wanted to understand, he could find his way here like anyone else. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't asking. I was simply existing, in a space I built for people who saw me. And that, I realized, was more revolutionary than any confrontation ever could be. On the 3rd morning of the retreat, we returned from a sunrise hike to the sound of soft music and the smell of rosemary focaccia rising from the kitchen. The mood was weightless. Sunlight spilled across the canyon, and everyone seemed to move through the day with a kind of ease you can't fake. Ease that comes only when you don't have to explain who you are. After breakfast, I wandered out to the overlook deck with my coffee, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It didn't last long. My phone buzzed against the ceramic tabletop. A call? Unknown number. I ignored it. A minute later, it buzzed again. This time, a text popped up. Carmen's number. Heads up, Mom and Dad are on their way. Isaac told them everything. I froze. Not with fear, not with dread, just with that sinking realization they couldn't leave it alone. I walked inside slowly, breathing through it. Priya was arranging paint palettes for her creative expression session on the terrace. Juniper was helping a guest set up a writing space near the garden. Carmen caught my eye from across the room and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. Don't be. An hour later, their SUV pulled into the gravel drive. Sleek, black, of course. I stepped outside to meet them before they could make a scene. My mother exited first, clutching her oversized designer tote like it was armor. My father followed, adjusting his sunglasses, surveying the house like it was a potential investment. "Elena," my mother said, her tone already tight. "We'd like to talk, alone." I folded my arms, grounding my feet in the red dust. "You're standing in the space I built," I said calmly. "This is my week, my guests, my rules." My father sighed. "We're just trying to understand why you're here, while the entire family is at the other lodge," I finished for him. "The one you said had no room for me? The one where 122 people were invited and somehow I wasn't one of them?" My mother blinked. My father looked away. "Carmen's here," my mother said, almost accusing. "She chose to be here," I replied. "So did everyone else." He looked through the tall glass windows behind me, where he could see people laughing, sipping tea, molding clay with Juniper's guidance. People creating, not performing. People belonging. What is this even about? My mother asked. You're punishing us? No, I said. I'm releasing myself from needing your permission to matter. The words landed between us like a stone. For a moment, the canyon wind was the only sound. You should have told us how hurt you were, my father said, quieter this time. I did, I answered. Just not in the way you were willing to hear. Another long silence. Then he asked, and these people? They're not family. They're the ones who made space when you didn't. His jaw tensed, but he didn't argue. Are we allowed to see it? He asked, motioning toward the retreat house. I considered it for a moment, then I stepped aside. You can come in, but not as parents here to evaluate. As guests, you'll be welcomed, but not centered. They said nothing as they followed me in, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't shrink under their gaze. I didn't explain my world. I let them see it for themselves. Inside, Carmen stood by the door, shoulders tense, but when she saw me, she relaxed. Priya caught my eye and nodded once, subtly. I knew what she meant. We've got you. I gave my parents a short tour. No embellishment. I introduced them to Juniper, who spoke of my design brilliance without a hint of exaggeration. I watched my mother's eyebrows lift as she walked through the candle-lit meditation room, and my father paused longer than expected in front of Devon's Canyon photo exhibit, displayed in the hallway I had curated myself. When we returned to the foyer, I said, Dinner's at 7. You're welcome to stay. They exchanged glances, uncertain, but they stayed. That evening, we dined on the deck under string lights and a sky streaked in orange and violet. Sophia served fire-roasted vegetables with saffron rice and fresh pomegranate glaze. My father complimented the meal. My mother complimented the plates. They didn't say much about the retreat, but they didn't criticize either. That night, before they left, my mother pulled me aside. This place is different, she said, her voice softer. Not what I expected. That's the point, I replied. It's not what you expected. It's what I created. She nodded slowly. We'll talk, she said. I didn't ask when. I didn't expect promises. But as they drove away, I felt something shift. Not in them, but in me. For the first time, I had brought them into my world, and I hadn't bent a single part of myself to do it. The day after my parents left felt like the eye of a storm, calm, surreal, but heavy with everything unspoken. Some of the guests had sensed the tension from the night before, but no one asked. They didn't need to. They offered me what my family rarely had, space and trust that I would share when I was ready. By mid-morning, we had gathered for Juniper's unmasking workshop. The idea was simple. Reflect on the labels others had put on you, then create something that reclaimed your narrative. We sat in a circle in the lower garden, soft earth beneath our hands, surrounded by stones, wire, paint, broken mirrors, clay, materials as raw and varied as the people working with them. Carmen sat beside me, silent at first. Then she picked up a shard of mirror and began painting over it in gentle gold strokes. I used to think being the obedient one kept me safe, she said quietly, not looking up. But it just made me invisible in a different way. I didn't reply. I just reached over and pressed my hand against hers for a second. She squeezed back. That afternoon, I walked through the retreat house slowly. Every room hummed with presence. Lila and Marcus were sketching furniture ideas for a sustainable design line. Devon was editing photos for an upcoming exhibit. Priya was teaching a small group how to release fear through color. The entire house had become a living canvas of authenticity. At sunset, we gathered for our final dinner. Everyone was asked to bring one thought. A lesson, a truth, a word they were taking home. Mine was this. We spend so much of our lives trying to earn a seat at someone else's table, we forget we can build our own. And when we do, that table becomes a lighthouse. There were tears. There was laughter. There was silence heavy with knowing. Later that evening, as I watched the guests linger on the overlook deck, trading contact info, Hugging like longtime friends, I knew that what I had built wasn't just a response to exclusion. It was a beginning, a homecoming, a blueprint. Then, just as I was heading to the kitchen to start packing up for the morning, I saw headlights outside. A lone car pulled in. I squinted through the glass. It was Blake, my brother, the one who had never spoken up, never reached out, never acknowledged my absence. I stepped outside, arms folded, unsure. He climbed out slowly, holding nothing but his phone and a plastic bag from a gas station. His usual polished look was gone. T-shirt, dusty jeans, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "I had to see it," he said. "Couldn't stop thinking about it after Isaac showed me the photos." I said nothing. He glanced at the house, his jaw tightening. "This isn't what I thought. I thought it was just your way of making a scene, proving a point, but it's not that, is it?" "No," I said. "It's the point itself." Blake looked away, then back at me. "Do you remember that summer when we built that sand city behind the lodge? You made those tiny rooms with leaves as beds. I told you I wanted to be an architect just like you." I blinked. "You said it was a waste of time." "I was 12, and trying to be Dad's shadow." He sighed. "I'm sorry, Elena, for not seeing what was happening to you, for watching it and saying nothing." The words didn't come easy to him. They never had. But there was something real in his voice, something that hadn't been scripted by our parents. I nodded once. "You want to come in?" He looked surprised. "I can?" I opened the door. Inside, I watched him take it in. The textures, the conversations, the calm. His face softened. "Mom would hate this rug," he said under his breath. "Exactly," I replied, smiling. That night, Blake stayed for the closing circle. He didn't speak. He just sat beside me, listening. When we parted, he hugged me tightly. "I'm not saying I can fix everything," he whispered, "but I want to try." And for the first time in years, I believed he meant it. The final morning arrived with a kind of stillness I had never known. Not silence, but completion. Guests lingered over breakfast on the overlook, sipping strong coffee, trading hugs and promises to stay in touch. Devin stood barefoot on the deck, capturing one last shot of the sunrise spilling gold over the canyon. Carmen sat curled in a corner chair, journal open, scribbling something that looked both messy and free. The elevation retreat was over, but its echo, I knew it would remain. As the house slowly emptied, I moved through the rooms in quiet gratitude, gathering notes left on pillows, drying brushes from yesterday's art session, folding the linens I had hand-selected weeks ago with nervous energy and hope. The final car to leave was Juniper's. She hugged me tight before slipping on her wrap. "You know what you've done here, right?" she said. I shrugged, suddenly shy. "You've shifted something. Not just in this house, but in the people who pass through it. You took the wound and made it into a door." As she drove away, I stood alone on the edge of the deck, watching the wind move through the red cliffs like breath through ribs. And then, another car. I recognized it before it turned off the engine. My parents, again. But this time, they weren't dressed for battle. My mother wore jeans, my father had a paper bag from the bakery in town. They stepped out quiet. No sharp glances, no rehearsed tones. I met them halfway. "We thought we could help clean up," my mother said, her voice tentative. "I've got it covered," I replied gently. She nodded, clearly unsure what to say next. My father handed me the bag. "Cinnamon rolls, from that place you used to like." A memory surfaced, me at 16, sketching a remodel of the very bakery they'd now visited. That was the year he called my portfolio cute. I didn't mention it. Instead, I said, "Thank you." A long pause stretched between us. Then my mother broke it. "We heard Blake came and stayed and said it changed something in him." I nodded. "Would you consider—" she began, voice trembling slightly. allowing us to come next year, even just for a day. That surprised me. My parents asking, not demanding, not assuming, asking. I don't know what next year looks like yet, I said honestly. But if it does happen again, you'd be welcome as participants, not as the center. My father cleared his throat. Understood. He hesitated. Then, with unusual humility, added, We thought the lodge was honoring your grandparents, but we turned it into something else. Maybe it's time we remember what it was really for. I held his gaze, searching for performance, but there wasn't any. Only a man who, for the first time, looked like he was seeing me without comparing me. I said nothing more. I didn't need to. As they left, my mother glanced back once, then smiled. Not the practiced one, but the soft kind I remembered from childhood. After they were gone, Carmen emerged from the doorway. That was unexpected, I exhaled. It was overdue. That afternoon, as I loaded the last box into my car, she turned to me. Are you okay? I thought about it. And for the first time in years, I could answer truthfully. Yes. Back in Portland, the apartment felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. That night, I lit a single candle and sat with the guest book I had brought back from the retreat. One by one, I read the messages. Thank you for reminding me I don't need permission to be seen. This was the first place I ever felt fully welcome. This changed how I see my own story. Then came one from Blake. I forgot who I was until I watched you remember who you are. Weeks passed. The ripple of the retreat carried further than I imagined. Clients reached out. Collaborators shared photos. An editor from a design journal asked if they could do a piece on the retreat. And then, an email from the Ruiz Family Trust. Apparently, my great-aunt Lucia, the last surviving sibling of my grandfather, had reviewed the original land grant deed for the Sedona property. Buried in the footnotes was a clause my grandfather had quietly included. A portion of the land is to be designated each year for creative gathering and reflection, prioritized for the family's descendants who pursue artistic purpose. Lucia wrote, Your grandfather saw you, Elena, even before the rest of us did. I've informed the board. That week is yours to claim. I cried when I read it. Not from sadness, from legacy. He knew. He always knew. So yes, the family retreat continues. But now it's not just theirs. It's mine too. Each summer, the Elevation Retreat returns. Same week, same sacred place. But now open to those who understand what it means to be shut out and choose to rise anyway. And every year, I begin the first evening the same way. Welcome. You were never too much. You were always just enough. Let this space remind you. Because I've learned something that I carry in every breath now. When they tell you there isn't room for you at their table, you don't need to argue or explain. You simply build a table so beautiful, so alive, so free, that one day even they will want to be invited in. And by then, you'll be the one deciding who gets a seat.